Hello, everyone. If AI writes essays, solve the math, and talks like us, is it actually thinking? Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that a machine has written a novel better than most best selling authors. It explains quantum physics to a teenager, it writes a flawless computer code, it passes the university exams easily, it even comforts the someone who's feeling anxious. Now, ask yourself one question. If something can do all of that, is it actually thinking? It's a question that sounds simple, but it has puzzled philosophers, neuroscientists, psychologists, and computer scientists for decades. Every time an AI chatbot answers a question, millions of people wonder whether they are witnessing genuine intelligence or just an incredibly convincing illusion. The surprising truth is that even the world's leading AI researchers don't completely agree. Some believe modern AI is beginning to develop forms of reasoning that no one expected. Others argue it's simply performing an extraordinarily sophisticated form of pattern matching. So, today we are going to explore one of the biggest questions in modern science. Can artificial intelligence really think like humans? Or are we confusing intelligence with something entirely different? So, whether you have used ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or Copilot, you have probably experienced something remarkable. You type a question, within seconds, an answer appears. Not just an any answer, but one that feels surprisingly natural. Ask it to explain black holes to a child. It can do that. Ask it to write a Shakespearean poem about the artificial intelligence. It can do that too. If you need help debugging computer code, writing an email, learning a new language, modern AI seems capable of almost anything involving language. That's why these systems are called large language models or LLMs. They are trained on enormous amounts of textbooks, scientific papers, websites, programming code, and many other publicly available sources to learn the statistical relationships between words and ideas. The latest models contain hundreds of billions of parameters, mathematical values adjusted during training that help the model recognize patterns in language. These aren't stored facts like pages in a book. Instead, they are numerical weights or values that are encoded, and the machine learned from vast amounts of the data. That's why AI doesn't retrieve answers from a hidden database. It generates them word or more precisely one token at a time. And because those responses sound so fluent, our brains naturally begin to treat the machine as though another mind is speaking. This tendency even has a name in psychology. Humans naturally anthropomorphize. We attribute human characteristics, emotions, or intentions to non human things. Like we name our cars, we apologize to robots, and sometimes we forget that a convincing conversation doesn't necessarily mean there's a conscious mind on the other side. Before we ask whether AI can think, we first need to answer an even harder question. What exactly is thinking? It sounds obvious until you actually try to define it. Is thinking simply solving the problems? If so, calculators think. Is it remembering information? Then your smartphone thinks too. Is it playing chess? Computers have defeated world champions for nearly 30 years. Clearly, thinking must involve something more. Psychologists generally describe thinking as a collection of mental processes rather than a single ability. These include reasoning, planning, learning, remembering, imagining, and making decisions. Also involve the solving problems and also reflecting on experiences. Notice something important here. Thinking isn't something you switch on. Your brain is thinking continuously, even while you are reading these words. It's predicting what comes next, filtering the distractions, connecting new ideas with old memories, even deciding whether you agree with what I am saying. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as a prediction machine. Rather than passively observing the world, your brain constantly generates predictions about what's going to happen next and updates those predictions based on new information. In many ways, your experience of reality is built from these ongoing predictions. That idea may sound surprisingly familiar because prediction also lies at the heart of the modern AI. But the way humans predict and the way AI predicts are fundamentally different. People often use the words thinking and intelligence as if they mean the same thing. They don't. Intelligence is generally the ability to solve the problems, learn, adapt, and achieve goals, while thinking is the process that produces those abilities. Imagine a Formula One racing car. Its incredible speed doesn't come from a single part. It's the result of engine, aerodynamics, tires, steering, electronics, and hundreds of other systems working together. Human thinking works in much of the same way. Reasoning helps us evaluate evidence, memory connects the present with the past, emotions influence our priorities, planning allows us to prepare for the future, learning changes our behavior based on experience. So, decision making integrates all of these systems into action. None of these processes operate in complete isolation. They constantly interact. So when you are deciding whether to accept a new job, for example, you aren't using logic alone. You are remembering previous experiences, imagining future possibilities, considering the financial security, thinking about your family, feeling excitement or perhaps fear. Human intelligence emerges from this extraordinary interaction between cognition, emotion, memory, and the experience. Current AI doesn't possess this biological integration. Its intelligence emerges from mathematics rather than lived experience. And that brings us to a simple comparison that perfectly illustrates the difference. Imagine placing a calculator and a mathematics professor side by side. Now ask both of them to solve a complicated equation. The calculator gives the answer almost instantly. The professor takes longer. Yet, no one would argue that the calculator understands the mathematics better than the professor. Why? Because the calculator follows mathematical operations without knowing what number actually represents. The professor understands the concepts, relationships, proofs, why the equation work, and perhaps most importantly, when the calculator produces a strange result, the mathematician can often recognize that something doesn't make sense. Understanding isn't just about arriving at a correct answer, it's about grasping the meaning behind it. Many AI researchers argue that today's language models face a similar challenge. They can produce astonishingly accurate responses, write softwares, explain chemistry, translate languages, even generate original stories. But are they doing these things because they truly understand the concepts involved, or because they have learned incredibly complex statistics patterns from enormous amounts of data? This question sits at the center of one of the most important scientific debates of our time. And to answer it, we first need to understand how human thinking actually works and how remarkably different it is from the way artificial intelligence processes information. That's exactly where we go next. Let's start with something incredibly ordinary: how humans solve the problems. Imagine you're walking through a park, suddenly someone throws a tennis ball towards you. You instinctively reach out and catch it. It feels effortless. But behind that simple action lies one of the most sophisticated computational systems ever discovered: the human brain. The moment your eyes detect the ball, millions of specialized neurons begin processing visual information. Your brain estimates its speed, its direction, its size, its distance. Then something remarkable happens. Before the ball even reaches you, your brain predicts where it will be in the next fraction of a second. And this prediction allows your muscles to move before the ball arrives. If your brain waited until the ball actually reached your hand, you would miss it every time. Neuroscientists call this predictive processing. Neuroscience call it this predictive processing. According to one influential theory in cognitive neuroscience, the brain is constantly generating predictions about the world and updating those predictions using incoming sensory information. But that's only part of the story. Your brain also searches memory. Have I caught a ball like this before? Is it heavy? Is it dangerous? At the same time, your emotions contribute information too. If the object looked like a rock instead of a tennis ball, your emotional systems would trigger a completely different response. Then your motor cortex coordinates dozens of the muscles with astonishing precision. All of this happens in roughly a few hundred milliseconds. So, without conscious effort, without you even realize it, human thinking isn't one process, it's an orchestra. Memory, emotion, prediction, perception, reason, attention, motor control, every section plays together. And because they are deeply interconnected, human intelligence is shaped not only by logic, but by experience, biology, and a lifetime of interacting with physical world. Now compare that to the artificial intelligence. So when you type a question into a chatbot, AI chatbot, something completely different happens. Suppose you ask, why is the sky blue? Unlike a search engine, ChatGPT doesn't search the internet for the answer. Instead, your sentence is first divided into small pieces called tokens. A token isn't always a complete word. It can be a whole word, part of a word, or even punctuation, depending on how the text is encoded. These tokens are then converted into the mathematical representations called embeddings. Think of an embedding as a point in a high dimensional mathematical space. Words with similar meanings end up close together. For example, doctor and physician are positioned closer than doctor and a banana. This allows the model to capture the relationships between concepts rather than simply memorizing the vocabulary. Next comes one of the biggest breakthroughs in the modern AI, the transformer architecture. It was introduced in a landmark 2017 research paper titled Attention is All You Need. Transformers transformed the field of the natural language processing by replacing older sequence processing methods with a with a mechanism called attention. Attention allows the model to determine which words in a sentence are most relevant to one and other. For example, consider the sentence, the animal didn't cross the road because it was too tired. What does it refer to, the road or the animal? Humans solve this almost instantly using context. Attention allows transformers to model these relationships mathematically. After processing the context, the model predicts the most probable next token. Then it repeats the process again and again, sometimes hundreds of times for a single response. This means chatbots doesn't generate an entire paragraph all at once. It builds each response one token at a time, continuously using previous context to predict what comes next. Everything happening inside the model is mathematical metrics, vectors, probability distributions, linear algebra, optimization. There are no emotions at all, no sensory experiences, no awareness, only computation. Yet somehow the results often sound remarkably human. Why? At first glance, humans and AI seem surprisingly similar. Both can recognize the patterns, both can solve the problems, both can learn, both can communicate. But if we look beneath the surface, their similarities quickly begin to disappear. Humans learn through direct interactions with the world. From infancy, we touch objects, we hear sounds, we feel temperature, we experience hunger, pain, joy, fear. Our knowledge is grounded in physical experience. AI doesn't have that kind of embodied experience. Instead, it learns by analyzing enormous data sets during training. Its knowledge comes from statistical relationships between patterns in data, not from living in the world. Another major difference is emotion. Human emotions are not simply feelings, they influence attention, memory, decision making, and motivation. Patients with damaged emotional centers of the brain often struggle to make even simple decisions despite having intact logical reasoning. Current language models don't possess genuine emotions. They can describe emotions convincingly because they have learned patterns in language, not because they experience them. Memory also works differently. Your memories change over time. Every time you recall an event, your brain reconstructs it. AI doesn't remember its training examples the way humans remember experiences. Instead, training adjusts billions of internal parameters that encode statistical relationships, and unlike humans, Most deployed language models do not permanently learn from each conversation by default. So, although humans and AI may sometimes produce similar outputs, the mechanisms producing those outputs are fundamentally different, which leads to an obvious question: if AI works so differently, why does it appear so intelligent? Here's the simple thought experiment. Imagine teaching a parrot to say, "Good morning, how are you today?" The pronunciation might be perfect, the timing might even seem appropriate. But does the parrot understand what those words actually mean? Probably not. It has learned to reproduce sounds. Now imagine talking with another person. When they say, "I'm glad you are here," those words are connected to memories, intentions, emotions, experiences, and meaning. The sounds may be similar, but the underlying processes are completely different. This is where many experts urge caution when evaluating AI. Fluent language isn't necessarily evidence of understanding. Language is what we observe. Thinking is the internal process that produces it. The two aren't always the same. In psychology, humans often attribute minds to anything that communicates naturally. This tendency is one reason conversations with AI can feel so convincing. The smoother the language becomes, the easier it is to assume genuine understanding. But appearances can be misleading. And that brings us to one of the most important discoveries in AI research. If AI doesn't think like humans, why does it perform so well? The answer lies in something researchers call emergence. Emergence occurs when simple components interacting at large scale produce behaviors that aren't obvious from the individual parts. Nature provides many examples. A single ant follows relatively simple rules, yet an entire ant colony can build complex nests, organize food collection, and adapt to changing environments. So no single ant understands the overall plan. The colony's intelligence emerges from countless local interactions. Something similar appears to happen in large language models. At a small scale, predicting the next word seems like a limited task. But when a transformer is trained on trillions of words using billions or even hundreds of billions of adjustable parameters, entirely new capabilities begin to emerge. Researchers have observed improvements in tasks such as summarization, translation, coding, mathematical reasoning, and multi-step problem solving as become larger and training becomes more extensive. Exactly why some of these capabilities emerge remains an active area of research. Scientists are still working to understand which abilities arise from scale alone and which require architectural changes or additional training methods. This is one reason AI research is moving so quickly. We are building systems whose capabilities sometimes surprise even the people who designed them. But despite these impressive abilities, one fundamental question remains unanswered. Does producing correct answers mean the system actually understand what it's saying? To explore that question, we need to leave computer science for a moment and enter the world of philosophy. So far, we have learned that AI predicts language with incredible accuracy, but prediction raises another question. Does producing the correct answer mean the system actually understands it? To explore this idea, let's travel back to 1980. American philosopher John Searle proposed one of the most famous thought experiments in the history of artificial intelligence. It's called the Chinese room. Imagine you are locked inside a room, someone outside slips a sheet of paper under the door with a question written in Chinese. There's only one problem: you don't understand Chinese. Fortunately, the room contains a huge instruction manual written in English. It tells you exactly which Chinese symbols to return for every possible input. You carefully follow the instructions. Eventually, the person outside receives a perfect, correct Chinese response. From their perspective, it appears that the person inside the room understands Chinese. But do you? No. You simply followed rules. Searle argued that computers do something similar. They manipulate symbols according to rules without actually understanding what those symbols mean. In his view, syntax, the manipulation of symbols, is not the same as semantics or meaning. Not everyone agrees. Many philosophers and computer scientists support what's known as the system's reply. They argue that while the individual inside the room doesn't understand Chinese, the entire system, the person, the rule book, and the room together does. This debate has continued for over 4 decades and remains unresolved. The Chinese room teaches us something important. Language and understanding may not be the same thing, and distinguishing between them is far more difficult than it first appears. Now we reach perhaps the most mysterious question in all of science. What is consciousness? It seems like a simple question. After all, each of us experiences consciousness every moment of our lives. You see colors, you hear sounds, you feel happiness, pain, curiosity. You have an inner experience of being you. Scientists call these subjective experiences are qualia. But here's the astonishing part. Despite decades of neuroscience research, nobody fully understands how these experiences arise from billions of neurons communicating through electrical and chemical signals. Some theories suggest consciousness emerges from highly integrated information across the brain. Others argue it's related to global communication between different brain regions. Still, others propose entirely different mechanisms. At present, there is no universally accepted scientific theory of consciousness. That uncertainty makes the AI question even harder. If we don't fully understand how consciousness emerges in humans, how can we determine whether a machine could ever possess it? Today's AI systems can describe emotions, they can explain consciousness, they can even discuss what it might feel like to be alive. But there is no scientific evidence that current language models have subjective experiences, self awareness, or feelings. They simulate conversations about consciousness that is very different from demonstrating consciousness itself. So when people ask, is chat GPT or chatbot conscious? The most scientifically accurate answer is there is currently no evidence that it is. But because consciousness itself remains an open scientific problem, the long term future is still unknown. So now you might wonder why spend so much time debating whether AI thinks or understands? Because the answer affects almost every aspect of modern society. Consider healthcare. Should an AI ever make life or death medical decisions independently? In education, if AI becomes an everyday learning companion, how should schools redefine creativity, assessment, and critical thinking? In law, can an AI system be held responsible for harmful decisions? Or is responsibility always the developers? In science, AI is already helping researchers discover new proteins, analyze astronomical data, and accelerates drug discovery. In robotics, the question becomes even more important. And if future robots interact with elderly patients, children, or emergency responders, people may naturally begin treating them as social beings. Then there are broader ethical questions. If a future AI genuinely became conscious, assuming that's even possible, would it deserve rights? Could turning it off become an ethical issue? At the moment, these questions remain hypothetical. But history has shown that technology often advances faster than laws, ethics, and public understanding. That's why conversations like this aren't merely philosophical, they are practical. The choices we make today will shape how society interacts with increasingly capable AI tomorrow. Let's bring everything together. Humans and AI share one important characteristic. Both process information, but they do so in fundamentally different ways. Humans learn through direct experiences. A child learns what fire is by seeing it, feeling its warmth, and eventually understanding that it can burn. AI learns from data collected during the training. Humans possess emotions that influence memory, attention, motivation, and decision making. Current AI systems have no scientifically verified emotions. Humans are biological organisms shaped by millions of years of evolution. AI consists of mathematical models optimized through algorithms and computation. Humans continuously learn throughout life by interacting with the world. Most deployed language models learn during training and do not permanently update their knowledge from every conversation. So, can AI behave intelligently? Absolutely. Can it solve complex problems? Yes. Can it reason? To a remarkable extent in many domains, yes. But does it think exactly like humans? Based on today's scientific understanding, we simply don't know. Perhaps the better question isn't whether AI thinks like us. Perhaps it's whether intelligence can exist in more than one form. Just as airplanes fly without flapping their wings like birds, future AI may become highly intelligent without even resembling the human mind. That possibility challenges one of our oldest assumptions, that intelligence must always look like our own. Let's end with a thought experiment. Imagine an artificial intelligence that doesn't just generate text. Imagine it remembers every experience throughout its lifetime. It dreams while inactive, learns from physical interaction with the world, feels pain when damaged, develops personal goals, forms long term relationships, and begins asking questions about its own existence. Would you still call it a machine? Or would you consider it conscious? There is no universally accepted answer for that, not because scientists are avoiding the question, but because we still don't fully understand the human mind itself. Perhaps one day neuroscience will explain consciousness completely. Perhaps artificial intelligence will force us to redefine what intelligence really means. Or perhaps we'll discover that human thought is unique in ways we haven't yet imagined. Whatever the answer turns out to be, one thing is already certain: artificial intelligence isn't just changing technology, it's changing how we think about ourselves. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the biggest questions in science, subscribe to AbroDecoded. Here, we don't just explain the technology, we decode the ideas shaping the future, from artificial intelligence and neuroscience to geopolitics, history, and the systems that connect them. Because understanding the future starts with asking better questions. Until next time, stay curious. Thank you.